April 7, 1998. York Street, London, Ontario. Two gunshots shatter the night outside a strip club. Two Outlaws leaders lie dead in the parking lot. Hours later, a bomb rips through a crowded restaurant. 5 civilians wounded. $1 million in damage. This wasn't gang violence. This was business. The Hells Angels were expanding west. The Outlaws controlled the highways. The Banditos wanted their piece. London, quiet, peaceful London, sat right in the middle of Canada's most profitable drug corridor. What happened next turned suburban streets into battlegrounds. Families found themselves living between rival clubhouses. Children walked to school past crime scenes. A motorcycle show nearly became a massacre. 3 clubs, 1 city, a war fought in your backyard. This is how organized crime came home. What this documentary will cover. In this documentary, we follow the Ontario Biker War from 1999 to 2002, when London shifted from a quiet regional city into one of the most active front lines of biker conflict in Canada. What began as a struggle for territory between rival clubs soon escalated into a campaign of bombings, shootings, and confrontations that left residents concerned and police working to respond effectively. We'll examine the most documented and significant moments. The April 7, 1998 York Street shooting that killed 2 Outlaws leaders. The bombing of TJ Baxter's Tap and Grill that injured civilians. The tense standoff at the February 2002 London motorcycle show, where rival gangs nearly clashed in front of families. And the turf battles that brought criminal conflict into public spaces across southern Ontario. This isn't just about biker rivalries. It's about how organized crime violence affected everyday life. Businesses targeted, families living with uncertainty, and communities forced to adapt to the presence of organized turf battles. Every event we cover is grounded in documented police reports, court records, and reliable media accounts, showing how London became a focal point of outlaw motorcycle club conflicts in Canada. Setting the scene, London, Ontario, a strategic location. To understand why London, Ontario became a center of biker conflict, you have to look at geography and criminal economics. London sat at the crossroads of Highway 401, one of Canada's busiest transport routes stretching from Windsor and Detroit through Toronto and eastward toward Montreal. For years, law enforcement identified this corridor as a major channel for drug trafficking, particularly methamphetamines and other controlled substances. Whoever controlled London held a strategic position on the pipeline of narcotics and money that flowed across Ontario. For decades, London had been a stronghold of the Outlaws Motorcycle Club, one of the world's oldest outlaw biker organizations. The Outlaws had established roots in the city, operating from their clubhouse on Egerton Street East, near the Western Fair grounds, and building influence across southern Ontario. Their presence made London a natural point of conflict when rival groups sought to expand into the region. By the late 1990s, the balance of power began shifting significantly. The Hells Angels, Canada's most powerful outlaw motorcycle club, were expanding westward from their established base in Quebec. They moved into Ontario aggressively, using support clubs, smaller affiliated groups such as the Rockers and the Jackals, to secure territory and confront rivals while maintaining some distance from direct confrontation. This strategic expansion meant London suddenly faced increased Hells Angels activity, directly challenging the entrenched Outlaws. Simultaneously, the Rock Machine, longtime rivals of the Angels from Quebec, had established chapters in Ontario. In December 2000, many Rock Machine members patched over to the Banditos, giving the region yet another major player to contend with. The result was a complex and volatile situation. Outlaws defending established territory, Hells Angels pushing westward with organized support crews, and Banditos attempting to establish their own presence. London, once viewed as just another mid-sized Canadian city, had become a strategic battleground. With important transportation routes, competing organizations, and valuable criminal markets, the city transformed into a location where biker conflicts would play out, with serious consequences for local communities. When rivalries turned deadly, the precarious balance in London's criminal underworld collapsed dramatically on April 7, 1998. That evening, Two major incidents shocked the city and demonstrated how far outlaw motorcycle clubs were prepared to escalate their conflicts. The violence began outside the Beef Baron, a York Street strip club, when Jeffrey Labrish, the acting president of the Outlaws London chapter, and fellow member Jody Hart were shot and killed in the parking lot. This wasn't a random attack. It was a direct strike against Outlaws' leadership, sending an unmistakable message about the changing balance of power in the city. Police later arrested 2 associates of the Hells Angels in connection with the murders, making the territorial nature of the violence clear. The bloodshed didn't end with the shootings. On the same day as the funerals for Labrish and Hart, TJ Baxter's Tap and Grill, a popular restaurant in London, was bombed. The explosion injured 5 people, all civilians who had no connection to biker conflicts, and caused an estimated $1 million in damages. The bombing demonstrated how criminal organizations were willing to use explosive devices in populated areas, regardless of the risk to innocent people. These April 1998 incidents marked a turning point in London's biker conflicts. The Outlaws placed a $50,000 bounty on the suspected shooters, escalating the stakes considerably. What had previously been territorial tensions and intimidation tactics had evolved into lethal violence carried out in public spaces where ordinary citizens could be caught in the crossfire. By 1999, the conflict intensified further as the Hells Angels began systematically working to patch over local clubs, expanding their Ontario presence at the expense of established organizations. London, long held as an outlaw's stronghold, became a primary battleground where the Angels pressed their territorial advantages through both recruitment and confrontation. The motorcycle show that nearly exploded. The tensions that had been building in London's biker underworld reached a dangerous crescendo in February 2002. The annual London Motorcycle Show, hosted at the Western Fair District, was normally a family-friendly event where enthusiasts came to admire motorcycles and related merchandise. However, the 2002 show became the stage for what could have been one of Ontario's most violent biker confrontations. The Hells Angels had promoted the show for the previous 2 years, and it was considered one of the top 5 events of its kind in Canada. But in 2002, rival clubs saw the event as an opportunity for a dramatic show of force. Intelligence reports later confirmed that the situation was carefully planned by multiple organizations. By mid-afternoon on the main day of the show, approximately 120 members of the Outlaws and their allies, including the Bandidos, had arrived at the Western Fair District. Many had traveled from across Canada and even from the United States to support the London Outlaws. Simultaneously, about 110 Hells Angels members and their support club, the Jackals, positioned themselves throughout the venue. Some of the Outlaws arrived wearing body armor, while others displayed large knives on their belts, clear indicators that they were prepared for serious violence. The atmosphere became electric as the two sides faced off in full view of civilian attendees. Giovanni Muscadere, leading the Bandidos, made a public display of solidarity with Outlaws national president Mario Parente, embracing him before positioning themselves strategically around the venue. Paul Porter, representing the Hells Angels, coordinated his organization's response. Families who had come to see motorcycles suddenly found themselves in the middle of what police later described as a powder keg situation. The confrontation was prevented only by the rapid intervention of over 40 officers from the London Police Service, who physically separated the rival groups and demanded that certain members leave the premises. Police Chief Murray Faulkner later stated publicly, "If the police weren't there, we were in for trouble, big time. I was guessing a multiple shooting or stabbing." The aftermath was immediate and lasting. The Hells Angels were banned from future motorcycle shows in London, and Mayor Anne-Marie de Ciccio successfully pushed to have the motorcycle show removed from the city entirely while it remained under Hells Angels organization. The incident demonstrated to residents that biker conflicts had moved beyond private disputes to potentially threatening public community events. Documented violence and law enforcement response. Throughout the late 1990s and early 2000s, documented police reports and court records reveal the escalating nature of biker conflicts in Ontario. law enforcement agencies tracked multiple incidents of arson, weapons violations, and territorial confrontations across the region. In 1999, police discovered significant weapons caches during investigations of biker properties, including the notable case where Wayne Kellestein's farm was searched following an assassination attempt. Officers found approximately 40 firearms and, remarkably, a rocket launcher, leading to serious weapons charges. This discovery highlighted the military-level equipment that some outlaw motorcycle club members were acquiring. Arson became a recurring tactic in the territorial disputes. In June 2001, the Outlaws clubhouse in Woodstock was destroyed by fire, with the Hells Angels suspected of involvement. Other documented incidents included attempts to plant explosive devices near rival clubhouses, though many of these plots were discovered and prevented by law enforcement before they could be carried out. The strategic nature of these conflicts became clear through intelligence gathered by police infiltration operations that had begun in 1999. Officers documented how territorial control was systematically pursued through intimidation, recruitment of smaller clubs, and the establishment of support networks that could operate across municipal boundaries. By August 2001, police were regularly interdicting weapons and explosive devices. In one documented case, an Outlaws member was arrested while traveling to a Hells Angels clubhouse, with authorities confiscating body armor, firearms, and a pipe bomb. These seizures provided concrete evidence of the level of preparation and weaponry involved in the biker conflicts. The human cost of organized crime conflicts. While the biker wars centered on territorial control and criminal profits, the impact extended far beyond the organizations involved. Civilians found themselves affected by violence they had no connection to and no control over. The bombing of T.J. Baxter's Tap and Grill serves as the clearest example of how biker conflicts endangered innocent people. The 5 individuals injured in that explosion were restaurant patrons and staff who happened to be present when the building was targeted due to perceived connections to rival organizations. Their injuries and trauma represented the human cost of using explosive devices in populated commercial areas. High-profile assassinations, like the York Street shooting of Outlaws leaders, are carried out in public locations where witnesses and bystanders were present. These incidents created lasting concerns among residents about personal safety in areas known to be connected to biker activities. Local businesses experienced both direct and indirect effects from the conflicts. Properties were damaged in attacks, insurance costs increased, and some establishments faced pressure to distance themselves from any perceived biker connections. The motorcycle show incident led to the cancellation of a long-standing community event, affecting vendors, organizers, and motorcycle enthusiasts who had no involvement in criminal activities. Residential areas near known clubhouses or frequent meeting places experienced increased police presence and occasional disruptions from investigations and preventive operations. While most neighborhoods were not directly affected by violence, the awareness that serious criminal conflicts were active in their city changed how many residents viewed their community's safety and reputation. These impacts accumulated over time, affecting London's image and creating what law enforcement described as a climate of concern among citizens who felt that their city had become associated with organized crime violence. Project Retire: The Law Enforcement Response. By 2002, the violence and criminal activity associated with biker conflicts in Ontario had reached levels that demanded a coordinated law enforcement response. On September 25, 2002, the Ontario Provincial Police launched Project Retire, one of the largest coordinated operations in Canadian biker enforcement history. The operation involved simultaneous raids across multiple Ontario municipalities, targeting the Outlaws Motorcycle Club's infrastructure. More than 500 officers participated in the coordinated effort, executing search warrants on clubhouses, residences, and businesses associated with the organization. The results were comprehensive and immediate. All 58 full-patch Outlaws members in Ontario were arrested, effectively dismantling the organization's leadership structure in the province. Among those arrested were National President Mario Parente and former National President Andrew Teach Simmons of the Kingston chapter, who faced charges including attempted murder. Police seized 44 firearms, narcotics worth approximately $1.6 million, 6 stolen vehicles, and 5 properties owned by the Outlaws. The strategic impact of Project Retire extended beyond the immediate arrests. With the Outlaws effectively removed from Ontario's criminal landscape, the Hells Angels emerged as the province's dominant outlaw motorcycle organization. Their aggressive expansion campaign of the late 1990s had already given them significant momentum, and the elimination of their primary organized opposition solidified their territorial control. For London specifically, Project Retire marked the end of the most intense period of biker conflict. The Outlaws, who had been the city's dominant biker organization since the late 1970s, were no longer a factor in the local criminal economy. The immediate result was a significant reduction in the open confrontations and public displays of biker rivalry that had characterized the previous several years. However, law enforcement recognized that Project Retire addressed the symptoms rather than the underlying causes of organized crime activity. The criminal markets that had motivated the territorial disputes, drug trafficking, illegal gambling, and other prohibited activities, remained profitable, creating the potential for future conflicts as organizations adapted to the changed landscape. Aftermath and continuing challenges. Project Retire successfully disrupted the immediate biker conflict in Ontario, but it did not eliminate organized crime activity in the region. Over the following years, different criminal organizations emerged or expanded to fill the vacuum left by the Outlaws' removal. By the 2010s, London experienced new forms of organized crime violence, including conflicts between the Hells Angels and street-level groups with various affiliations. These later incidents, while significant, operated on a different scale and with different dynamics than the direct biker war of 1999-2002. The original biker conflicts also spread beyond London to smaller Ontario communities, as various groups sought to establish or maintain territory outside the major urban centers. Towns like Cornwall and Brockville experienced their own incidents related to biker rivalries, though typically involving smaller numbers of people and less public confrontation than had occurred in London during the peak conflict period. For law enforcement, the Ontario Biker War provided important lessons about the need for coordinated, intelligence-based approaches to organized crime. Traditional reactive policing methods proved insufficient when dealing with well-organized criminal networks that operated across municipal and provincial boundaries. The success of Project Retire demonstrated the effectiveness of long-term investigation combined with coordinated enforcement action. Long-term impact on community and law enforcement. The biker conflicts of 1999-2002 left lasting changes in how London and other Ontario communities approached organized crime threats. The public confrontations, bombings, and shootings had demonstrated that criminal rivalries could directly affect civilian safety and community activities. Local governments developed new approaches to regulating events and venues that might attract organized crime attention. The motorcycle show incident led to more restrictive policies about public events sponsored by organizations with known criminal connections. Business owners in affected areas became more aware of the potential consequences of any perceived association with outlaw motorcycle clubs. Law enforcement agencies implemented improved intelligence sharing protocols and developed specialized units focused on outlaw motorcycle gangs. The recognition that these organizations operated as sophisticated criminal enterprises, rather than simply groups of motorcycle enthusiasts, led to more strategic approaches to investigation and prosecution. The success of Project Retire also influenced law enforcement approaches in other provinces, providing a model for coordinated operations against organized crime networks. The operation demonstrated that sustained pressure and coordinated action could effectively disrupt well-established criminal organizations. For the communities affected, the biker war period became a defining experience that shaped local attitudes toward organized crime and public safety. While the immediate crisis passed, the awareness that such conflicts could emerge and affect civilian life remained part of the community's understanding of the potential consequences of organized crime activity. Lessons about organized crime in Canadian communities. The Ontario Biker War revealed important truths about how organized crime conflicts can affect communities that never chose to be involved. London's experience showed that territorial disputes between criminal organizations inevitably spill over into public spaces, affecting businesses, events, and neighborhood safety. The strategic nature of the conflicts, centered on control of drug trafficking routes and markets, demonstrated how criminal organizations view geography and legitimate businesses as tools for illegal enterprises. The Highway 401 corridor's importance to the biker war highlighted how criminal groups exploit the same transportation and economic infrastructure that supports legal commerce. The use of support clubs and affiliate organizations by the Hells Angels showed how sophisticated criminal networks can maintain operational flexibility while pursuing territorial expansion. This approach allowed them to engage in conflicts while maintaining some distance from direct legal consequences, at least temporarily. The effectiveness of Project Retire proved that coordinated law enforcement action, based on long-term intelligence gathering, could successfully disrupt organized crime networks. However, it also demonstrated that addressing criminal organizations requires sustained effort and resources, as the underlying criminal markets continue to provide incentives for new groups to emerge. For Canadian communities, the Ontario Biker War serves as an example of how organized crime conflicts can emerge in unexpected locations and affect residents who have no connection to criminal activities. The experience underscores the importance of law enforcement coordination and community awareness in preventing and responding to such threats. Conclusion: the Ontario Biker War of 1999 to 2002 was fundamentally about power, territory, and money, with the costs paid not only by the criminal organizations involved, but also by the communities where their conflicts played out. In London, quiet streets became contested ground, businesses became potential targets, and public events required police intervention to prevent violence. The documented incidents, from the York Street shootings to the TJ Baxter bombing to the motorcycle show confrontation, showed residents that organized crime disputes could directly threaten civilian safety. The use of firearms, explosives, and intimidation tactics by outlaw motorcycle clubs demonstrated the serious nature of territorial conflicts in criminal markets. Even after the major police operations and leadership arrests that ended the most intense period of conflict, the underlying issues remained. Criminal markets continued to provide incentives for territorial competition, and new organizations eventually emerged to challenge or replace those that had been disrupted. Today, the Ontario Biker War serves as a case study in how organized crime conflicts can affect entire communities. The violence was not random or spontaneous. It was the calculated result of territorial competition between sophisticated criminal enterprises. The lesson for communities across Canada is clear. When organized crime groups compete for control of illegal markets, the consequences extend far beyond the criminal organizations themselves. The events in London and across Ontario during those years left behind more than police reports and court records. They left a reminder that organized crime is not an abstract threat. It is a force that can directly impact the safety and quality of life in communities across the country.